right, welcome. So let's get started. Today we're going to be talking about various lighting instruments, and we've got a guest speaker that's going to do much of the presentation. So I'm just going to give you some basic information to start with and then turn it over to my colleague Alton Chewning. What we're talking about, different types of lighting instruments, types of fixtures, and sources of light. The types of fixtures is how the light is encased and how it's focused onto the subjects. So the most basic type of fixture would be just a raw source. You know, it just shoots the light everywhere. It's out of control, you know. Yeah, you might have that. You might use that, in fact. You might put a string of light bulbs up, you know, as a part of your set decoration or something. The next level would be what we call an open face light. And that has a reflector in the back and then the light source, but the front of it's open. There's kind of a protective wire screen here, but it doesn't have to be there. It's just open. Most of those are focusable, which is there's a spot flood in the back, and you can get it, you know, a narrower or a wider beam. There are some that are just like called a scoop that's just not focusable, super simple. Then this would be a Fresnel, which has a lens in front of it, a glass lens, usually glass, and it's a lens that's got rings because it's been kind of sliced up and recombined, so it's lighter. Those also have a reflector in the back, and they're also focusable, but those will create a sharper light because of the lens. And then you have an ellipsoidal or ellipsoid, which is an even more focusable light. It's got a solid lens in the middle of it. The lens moves. It's got, you know, shutters that are adjustable on the inside. Some of them will zoom in and out to get wider and tighter. So, you know, even a more controllable type of light fixture. And then you've got a panel, which is just an array of lots and lots and lots of little lights that functions as one big wide source. Sometimes they have diffusion over top of them to even, you know, smear out the source even more than that. These are often dimmable. They'll even make these in like flexible panels, so you can kind of wrap them around a corner or something like that. And these often will have different colors mixed together. So by controlling the brightness, you can change the color of the light. These are kind of a variation on the panel light, just in different shapes. You'll have like a little wand or a ring or, you know, various kinds of things like that. They're the same type of technology generally, but just with unique shapes for certain purposes. And then there are lights that are tubes. They can be just a loose tube, and those are pretty useful for a lot of things, or they can be in a fixture like this. They can be different colors, and they can be mixed and matched. They can be dimmable. And then you can have this kind of a light is kind of an indirect light. The light's encased in here, and it's bouncing off a white surface. So that's just a soft light that's achieved by indirect light. And then lights that are an array that have a whole bunch of lights in a unit, and they can all be turned off and on and aimed separately. So that's kind of a real quick overview of all the different kinds of lights there are. And Alton is going to show you these things and go over them in detail, but just wanted to give you a visual and text kind of overview of what we're talking about. And then in terms of light sources, these are most of the kinds of things that can make light. Lots of things can make light. But that's just kind of a laundry list of some of the kinds of things that you know, can make light. Number one, Monsieur Soleil, the world's largest light source, nuclear fusion powered. You ain't gonna beat it. Very useful. Number two, tungsten. Tungsten is very old. It creates light by heating up a piece of metal. It's very hot. It uses a lot of power. You know, it's kind of a warm color light. Again, just running electricity through a metal filament. That's a very simple technology. Fluorescent is actually a tube full of gas. It uses a lot less power. It's a lot less heat. They can change. They can be different colors, and you're actually creating what they call a plasma. You've got a gas. There's a very high voltage electricity. There's a transformer that steps the electricity up to a very high voltage, and it hits the molecules in that gas and creates this charged plasma that lights up in there. So there's an HMI, which is a type of arc light. It's very efficient. It's very bright for the power you put into it. And it's an arc of electricity running through a little gas-filled globe. They don't make a ton of heat for as powerful as they are. They're daylight balanced. These are usually they're often very large lights because they're the only light that can put out that much light. So when somebody needs something really big, they'll go to an HMI, but there's like a little glass envelope. There's a gas in there. It's also very high voltage. There's a transformer ballast that jacks the voltage way high up, and it creates this arc of electricity that's very, very bright. LEDs are a semiconductor, same thing that computer chips are made out of, and you run current through the semiconductor, and it creates light. I can't pretend to understand exactly how that black magic works, but they use very low power. They don't have a lot of heat. They can make them in all different colors. So very popular light source. There's a little diagram of how you've got the different types of semiconductor material, and when you put electricity through it, light comes out, photons get emitted. And then there are a number of other things. In still photography, you use a strobe light, which just flashes for an instant, but very bright for the amount of power. In addition to HMIs, there are other kinds of arc lights that use an arc of electricity. There's a very old one called a carbon arc. There's something called a xenon. There's a mercury vapor, those yellow things you see you used to see in street lights and factories. This is what the inside of a HMI bulb looks like. You have lasers, a flame. You have chemical things like a glow stick or a jellyfish or something. So there's all kinds of things that can make light. So that's just to give a general overview and a little documentation on all the different kinds of sizes and shapes of lights there are, and all the different kinds of processes that emit light. And this little chart, which you can look at later if you'd like, just kind of lays down some of the different characteristics. But each of these light sources has their own pluses and minuses, their own characteristics. And so there's a lot of different options that you are faced with when you're looking out into the lighting world. And now I'm going to turn this over to our guest speaker, Alton, who is going to show you this stuff and demonstrate it. Alton is an amazing director of photography. You can look him up on IMDb. He's done lots and lots of movies and commercials and everything else. Good friend of mine and super talented. And he is going to go through a lot of what I just mentioned briefly and show you some of these lights and answer your questions and really give you the lowdown on that. And that will be it for me for this session.
So, I'm Alton Chewning. I'm here today. We're doing a seminar on lighting. And today we'll talk about instruments, how to use instruments, what accessories go with the different instruments, and it'll touch on a lot of other things there. I got a question, Dave, for ask you first. What's a bulb? A bulb. A bulb. Is this a bulb, this lighting instrument? Yes or no? It's digital. What do you say? Yes or no?
It's an LED.
It's an LED, but is it a bulb?
Yes.
No. All right, so a bulb technically is the glass around a light that has a glass fixture inside of it, like a tungsten light. So the glass is the bulb, the lamp itself is the lamp, and this is a light or an instrument. Okay, so that's what we're talking about when we talk about lights or instruments. So we're going to talk about different types of instruments that are used in television, film work, and at any point, if you've got any questions, it's good to stop me and ask. And I believe we have one of our audience is going to serve as a model for us today, so we appreciate that. There are a lot of different types of light. Have you all been here for other classes? couple. Do y'all remember talking about color temperature? So there's an inherent color temperature in a light, or in any light in the world. Daylight typically is something called 5600 Kelvin. We consider that blue. Even though when we go outside in the middle of the day and everything doesn't look blue, for photographic purposes we consider that as blue. Indoor lights we consider, generally speaking, as either somewhere in between blue and warm, like a warm color. So this light on my hand right now is a warm color. All right, so that's a tungsten light. All right, so we'll start with that. Now, if you wouldn't mind having a seat up front. Right now, there's one light that you're getting a little bit on your face, and that's coming from our light that's also lighting me. And it's daylight color. We adjusted the cameras to that daylight color, so it looks more or less neutral. All right, so we're going to add another light, and we're doing this with a dimmer. This is a tungsten light. That's the type of lighting that was most prominent up until about 10 years ago, particularly indoors. So this is a tungsten light, and I'm dimming it up using a dimmer. Okay, and as you can see, the tungsten light is warm compared to the daylight. So tungsten inherently is a warm light, and by dimming it down partially, it becomes even warmer. And that can be useful for a lighting effect. I like using dimmers a lot. You can't use them with every type of lighting, but when it's possible to use them, they give you a lot of flexibility, a lot of control. The downside is it takes a while to set them up if you're using a dimmer system, but I'll talk a little bit more about that. It's become a very, very popular thing to have some form of lighting control, either by cables or by wireless. Okay, very, very popular. So this is a tungsten light. I can make it do little tricks. I can bring it up, take it down, all from here. If I didn't have the dimmer in it, I'd be doing something with the light itself. Now, if either of you have a shot of this, I'll pull it around. So the tungsten light has, first of all, it's warm. It gets warm. It gets to the point that I don't want to touch it with my bare hands. I maybe, because it hasn't been on for very long, can touch it, the barn doors. These little devices on the front are to channel the light, to take it off of places you don't want it. So one thing you'll quickly discover when working with tungsten lights, this is the first piece of gear you should ever buy, and that is a set of gloves, okay? They're very useful for hot lights, but they're also useful for carrying around heavy equipment so you're not skinning up your hand all the time. Leather gloves, not cloth gloves. Leather gloves. First thing you should buy, if you only show up on a set with one thing, maybe a water bottle, and leather gloves, right? So, when you set a light, I'm going to spin this contraption around so we can turn on the light again on you. Typically, when you have a light that can be focused or directly pointed at someone, you should position the light so the center of the light's right on the person. You should find where the center of the light is and place that right on the person. And then if for whatever reason you want to change it and move it around, you can. This also has a spot flood on it. So I don't know if you can see this in the wide shot, but I am spotting it, and you can tell by the shadow behind her. I'm sorry, your name again?
Kari.
Kari. The shadow behind Kari, whether I've got it pointed directly on her, like I'm off of her now. I'm on her chest. Now I'm pretty well on her face. Now I'm off, and now I'm back on her face. So that's where I want to be. So now I'm going to flood the light out to where I think accomplishes what I'm looking for. So first thing you do when you're setting a light that has spot flood capability is you make sure the light's centered on the subject. And then you adjust the light by making it wider or tighter or whatever. But it has to be hitting in the right place. If I have it too high, I'm spotted up on the ceiling and not on her. One other thing with tungsten lights is they use more electricity. So you have to be a little more careful about plugging in larger tungsten lights into household circuits, because you can throw the breakers and draw too much power from the circuits that are available. But they're great lights. This is what's been in use since probably, I don't know, the 1920s through the 2020 or 2015. And they're still widely used. I've got friends a friend that works in Hollywood, and we ask him, you know, do you still use tungsten lights? Because LEDs have become so prominent. And he said, no, most of the movies I work on are lower budget, and we use LED light. The movies that use a lot of tungsten light are the big budget movies, the ones that have all the money in the world. And they'll use mostly tungsten indoors in studios. All right, so that's the tungsten. This is an LED light. All right, tell me one difference you see between that and what we did last. White? Yeah, it's a bluer light. The cameras are set up for it, so that looks good. Now, for a person that's doing lighting, their person they like most on set is the makeup person, because lighting inherently causes some things to look great on a person's face, some things to look not as great. This light is pretty much straight on, boom, right on your face. You have nice glowing skin. You've got good oil in your skin. So sometimes when the light's in the right angle, it can appear shiny. So a makeup person would come in and do some trick. They might use something to remove some of the oil, like a tissue of some sort, special tissue, or they may take some sort of makeup powder or something else to reduce the shine. And that happens to everybody. If you had no oil in your skin, it might be the opposite problem. They may come in and add oil to your skin so that you look healthier. So some oil is desirable, particularly people with dark complexion. You want some oil there. But a makeup person can make all the difference in a lighting person's, you know, life, happiness. Okay, so that's an LED. This LED strictly does daylight. So I'm going to show you another LED. All right, so this is this light down here. And it now is set to a tungsten. So how would you describe it compared to the other? Warm. Yeah, warm, orangier. Yeah, more sunset-like. So that's a warm light. Now we've got it at a low angle, which is kind of, you know, throwing up shadow, and it maybe looks a little creepy. You know, angles of lights can give an emotion or give a feel for a scene. And typically people say, well, if the light's low, then it makes them look a little odd or unusual, or a low light are used a lot, low angled lights are used a lot for horror movies. Did you get to see yourself over here? Okay. You look a little scary. So, all right, so, but that's warm light. So let's change it from warm to blue. So this light has the ability to change colors. The only way I can change colors on this tungsten light is to add gel to it, other than dimming it up and down to make it warmer, but I can't make it blue. I would have to add gel on top of the light to make it blue. This light, which is called a bicolor LED, can go anywhere from the same color as this, and I'm gonna bring up both of them now, and it might be a little warm, a little hot. Okay, so I've got this light going and this light going, and they're both set to tungsten, so they kind of match each other. All right, so now I'm gonna change the bottom one to blue, but the top one's still warm. But the bottom one's strong enough to override it. So this light, taking out the middle one, this light is a bicolor. It does two B-I, color. It does two colors. It goes tungsten and it does daylight. You can go in between the two with the adjustment of it, and let's try that. This is kind of in between the two. The really fancy lights, like they're used in theater, can be more precisely controlled and can be used to change colors to make them various colors, like red or blue or green. Those are typically called RGB lights, but you can give a background wash that's all purple and then instantly change it to light green or any other color really you can think of. So those are very popular too. They're also more expensive, more complicated, and they require more channels and a dimmer. We've turned on a panel light in the middle. All of the rest of our lights are off. So panel lights can be tungsten, they can be HMI, they can be other things, but a lot of the LED lights are panel lights. And it's just a bigger array of lighting with a lot of different LEDs in there, and usually something in front of it to make it softer. Some of these can be controlled by dimmers, some of them are strictly controlled at the source itself. So this one's controlled by a rotary dial on the back of it. And this also is set at daylight right now. This one can be adjusted from daylight to tungsten. Tungsten lights ruled the day for many, many, many years, for decades, right? And then LEDs started coming along. But prior to LEDs, in between tungsten and LEDs, there were fluorescents. Like, what are the lights overhead right now? It's a fluorescent light. Most office buildings are lit with fluorescent light, usually overhead. And they tend to be in long tubes, and they're cooler, they're efficient, they don't use as much electricity. It's not the prettiest light in the world, but it does a good job of lighting up massive offices. So at one point, filmmakers started saying, if we had prettier versions of those, ones that have better color and that don't flicker inadvertently, then they would be useful for using in television work, film work. And so one of the first brands that came along was called KinoFlow. Kino because of motion and flow because of fluorescence. But this is a KinoFlow light. If one of the cameras can pick this up. This is a KinoFlow light. It's on. And I'll put it on our subject. Okay, obviously it's too bright. I can dim it down to some extent. This has a dimmer built into it. And it's a pretty attractive light. It also could be considered a panel light. It's somewhat like this light. It's a big panel of light. All right? It's essentially a soft light to some extent. I'm going to turn this to the cameras again. This one has, if you can see this on camera, has louvers inside to channel the light. This light does not have louvers, and so the light tends to spray out more. This is more channeled. Can y'all see that from your? Okay. Also, now I'm going to take the channels off, the louver off, and hopefully this isn't too bright for your cameras. How many bulbs are in there? Actually, there are 4. So 3 of them are warm and 1 is cool. They can be taken out individually, so you can make them all, the cool one is a daylight. The warm ones are tungsten. So this makes a light that when you're set for tungsten light, when your camera's set for tungsten light, it can make it a little bluer, for an effect. So you can interchange the lamps. It's somewhat like what you could do with the with our friend, the LED here, where you could change the color of it. It's like that, but you're changing the color by actually physically changing the bulbs in it. So it's not as convenient as this, but it is another way of working with that. And these are very cool. You can lay your hand on them, and you're not going to get burned. I would not lay my hand on the little tungsten light here because that would burn me. You can lay your hand on them, and they're very lightweight. So they have a good long purpose too. They don't last as long as LED lights. They don't have the longevity of LED lights. At the same time, tungsten was going strong. I'm gonna hold off for 1 second and say something about this tungsten light. You can see it's a hard light. Hard lights cast this very sharp shadows. So you can see her shadow behind here that is very distinct. And if I hold my hand up in front of it, it's very distinct. Whereas if I get rid of that and bring up the LED, which is more of a panel, you'll still see a shadow, but it's much softer. The more I move my hand away, the harder it gets, but it's still pretty soft. I mean, I can cross over and you don't see a defined edge to the shadow. So that's the difference between hard light and soft light. One is not superior to the other, it's just different things. Okay, so at a certain point, the only lights that were used outside for the first, I don't know, almost 100 years of movie making, certainly the first 75 years of movie making, were either giant arrays of tungsten lights, where, I mean, lights that, this is 100 watt or 150 watt. They would use lights that maybe are 50,000 watts, so the equivalent of 500 of these. The sun is awfully bright. It's hard to do anything that's nearly as bright as the sun. So you have to do something really powerful to affect the sun. There was a particular type of light, which I'm not going to have here to demonstrate, called a brute arc. And it was the only other thing, aside from giant arrays of tungsten lights, that would make a difference. And I'll show you some photos of them. It was actually required a lot of electricity, direct current electricity, and they would take, it's almost like welding. They would take carbon rods and get them to just the right distance, and at the right distance, electricity would jump from one rod to the other rod, causing a massive amount of light, right? But as it sat there, creating a massive amount of light, the rods would burn away. And so essentially that's what was going on inside these fixtures. Is there was a chemical photochemical reaction going on, and somebody would have to keep tweaking the rods to keep them getting closer and closer, but just at the right distance to create that. And it made very bright light, but they were cumbersome and difficult to work with, and a person really had to know what they're doing. So as an alternative to that, eventually something was invented in Germany called the HMI light. This is a 125 watt HMI light. They're made up to 20,000 watts. So, one's this big around, right? And those are about the most powerful light in existence for a single lighting instrument. So I'm going to turn this on. All HMIs have a separate ballast, an electronic power supply and transformer that juices up the electricity you're sending in to provide a big burst of electricity to the light to cause it to start up. And then it settles down. But all of them have this, so we'll try this. A couple of other things about this light first. And I'm glad I did this before turning it on. All right, what do you see there? You see a lamp. And HMI lights put off UV radiation, which is bad for your eye. So these have a UV radiation shield built into it. The bulb is actually inside a glass envelope. All right, and that glass envelope keeps the UV radiation from hurting you. But it's just a bare bulb. In order to channel the light in agreeable ways, you put in little lenses. All right, so a lens. I don't know if you can get this on camera. Lens. There are different types of lenses. This one's about like something you would have in a car, on the headlights of a car. This one is sometimes called a bug eye. It's got a lot more facets on it. This one will scatter the light much wider, and it's the one most commonly used. This will make the light tighter and more focused. You can also rotate it to change the channeling of the light, the angle of the light. I'll show you one more. And this is another one that's not quite as channeled as the other. All right, so I'm going to put the wide one on here. So this is the widest one, the bug eye. And I'm sliding it in front, and I'm turning this little lever over the top to keep it in there so it doesn't fall out. Now this also has barn doors, and I'll slide the barn doors in here. And so these again allow you to control the light more. And then one other thing, because this light cannot be dimmed, it cannot be controlled. It's not like an LED. It can't be controlled so you can bring it up or down. It's not like a tungsten. It can't be dimmed up or down. It's just whatever it throws out is what it throws out. All right, so if it's too much, you can put these wire scrims in front of it. All right, so this cuts it by about half. This cuts it by a quarter. And there's some that only cut the top or bottom depending on how you position it. These are called scrims, and these have been in use for, again, 50, 75 years. They're used in tungsten lights. They can be used in LED lights. Scrims. And they would also go behind here. They would slide in and go behind and sit in the barn doors. All right, so now we have a lens in here, and now we're plugged into electricity. These do use electricity. Most lights use electricity of some description. All right, so now we'll try to fire it. The thing with HMIs, they have to warm up for about a minute or so, 30 seconds to a minute. Sometimes they'll make a little sound like zzz, which can scare you if you're not aware of it. So usually you'll say something to alert everybody, something like firing the HMI, to alert. This one's not particularly loud, but anyway, it'll gradually come up to speed. All right, so you can see it's already started to heat up a little bit. It's strong. It's the strongest light, even though this is only 125 watts, as is this little light over here, 125 watts. This puts out far more light than that does. Okay, that's the big thing with HMIs. They're powerful. They're powerful. And HMIs are strictly daylight. They're strictly daylight. You can put gel on them to make them warm, but they're strictly daylight. So just for comparison, she has warm light on her now. I'm going to take that off. This is going to be far too bright, so I'm just going to try to do the edge of it on her. So you can see that's blue daylight. And, it's a powerful light. And that's just 125 watts. Again, they make them 20,000 watts. So if you see a big movie shooting and they've got big lights out, it most probably is a form of HMIs. Dimming, like I said, is a very important thing now. It's always been around, or it's been around for, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 years, but it's been wired. You run a cable to a light, and you have a controller, and you use that controller to run the light up or down via that control cable. Now there's the capability of doing a lot of these lights wirelessly. So I'm going to hold a light, and there's just one cable going. This is just a regular household lamp. It plugs into the wall. So this is just plugged into the wall, nothing fancy about that. It's just supplying electricity to here. And it's turned on, but it's not burning, right? So is it burned out? Well, no. Ooh. So, gosh, that's a pretty red light. I wonder if it's always red. Oh my gosh, it's blue. Okay. So, this is just it's a light bulb. Oh my God, it just turned green. Oh, it's blue. So, Rhea's controlling all of this using a pad. It could be a phone. It could be a laptop. All right. So she's got a pad here. Change something. Can you do it while I'm holding it?
I can. I've got it. Right now I have it on rainbow. Let's see what we got for fire or ice. Let's see what that'll do.
So it not only can change colors, it can change effects and give
and I can speed it up.
And all this is being done, wirelessly, right? Just like your phone works. And so theoretically, you could go into a studio and every instrument in the studio could be wirelessly controlled. That's pretty rare for that to happen. It's usually a combination of the two. But it's very important, very useful thing. Can you make it a fire effect? Okay, so this is a fire effect. I'm going to turn off. I got all my stuff turned off. Well, HMI. I'm going to turn off our HMI. Okay. And so it may not be quite strong enough to get the idea across, and we have other lights in here. But yeah, you can kind of see a fire thing happening. Warm your hands over the fire, would you please? Thank you. Oh, yes, that's it. So anyway, you can do, I don't know, various tricks with it. Strobes or police beacons or various tricks with it. So they're very useful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to get back to the tungsten light for 1 minute and show you a little trick. This is our tungsten light back up. This is something called a cucurellus. And I don't know where that name came from. People frequently just call it a cookie. And it's a piece of wood that's had these odd shapes cut in it. And the idea is this can create a pattern that looks something like light coming through tree leaves, dappled sunlight, or it can be a much more abstract thing. These are frequently used. There are other ways to achieve the same thing, but we'll look at how this does. So I'm going to hold it up, and you can see it creates these little spaces where, if you hold it in the right way, you maybe could believe that that's light coming through a tree, right? One thing about this, if you move it away from the light, the pattern becomes, it gets in the shot. The pattern becomes harder, sharper, more defined. If you hold it closer to the light, it becomes a lot softer and less defined. All right, so this is called a cookie, still in use. We have another light called an ellipsoid, And we have an assistant here that's going to demonstrate this. These were originally used in theater a lot. I mean, any theater would have a big assortment of these. There are many different brands of them, but they're ellipsoid lights. This brand is a Source 4. So it can be very tightly controlled. And because of that, it's found a lot of use in television and motion picture work. It can be very tightly controlled, and it also can have patterns put into it. So we're gonna put in a pattern, and by pushing the light, the front of the light, in, it's got a sliding barrel, and by pushing the light in and out, it sharpens the pattern. When the light is pushed one way or the other all the way, you lose the pattern. But the tighter, right when you get it in focus at the right distance, it pulls the pattern into focus. It also has shutters or barn doors, another type of barn door, that allow you to cut the light very specifically. So Ria's going to cut it right here at the top of her head. Just off the top of her forehead, right above her eyebrows maybe, if you can. So you can very tightly control the light. So we got rid of all the light back here on the background. And we just have the light just on her. So in this case, this would give the impression of lights, sunlight, say, coming through Venetian blinds on a window, or some other, shafts of light. There are many, many different patterns that could be put in this light. They're called gobos.
You know why they're called gobos?
No, why are they called gobos?
Because they go between the lamp and the lens.
Ah, very good. They go between the lamp and the lens. Gobos. All right, I've never heard that. These are a variety of different gobos or patterns. All of these are windows. They can be stars. They can be something that gives the appearance of leaf breakup, similar to what the cookie did. They can be all kind of crazy things, swirls, all sorts of things. And now they can move. And you can put two of them together. So there's a lot of possibilities with this. All right, so we can take it away now. And those are called ellipsoid lights, very useful lights when you want to really control a light and or use it to cast patterns.
So that's a flag, a solid that would, we could create a hard shadow for that. She's going to kind of a hard line or something. And again, same as all the rest of this stuff, the more distance there is, the softer it is, and the closer it is, the harder it is. Then you've got things like deep nets that block part of the light, and you can use them for level control, just to knock the amount of light down, it's just too bright. And you can also, create, edges like that, and can create, if you get it the right distance, you can create soft effects or patterns. So that can be a nice control device. I think we looked at, we talked about gobos. We looked at the little insert gobo that went in that pattern light, that Source 4 there, that, the little metal cutout you stick in there. Since that's got lenses, it's like a projector. It creates a very sharp image. You can actually project a picture on there, but then you can also just use a cutout piece of something as a gobo or anything, really. Well, puppet. So here's a gobo for you. So we do this. There's a gobo. It's what, you can go get a branch and cut it off a tree, put it up anything that's casting a shadow, you get these, they come in these kits, the things that have the like little broken up branchy looking patterns, those are gobos. They're just, it's just a pattern, but something that breaks up the light, gives you a little bit the different character to it. Shutters are the cutting things that are built into these lights that, and they're internal because of the way this focus has, because of sharp focusing. So this will create edges internally, and then most of the lights we use have barn doors, which will do the same thing on the outside. Barn doors are very handy because they're right there and they're super quick. You do a lot of things very fast with barn doors. Get rid of camera flare or just keep the light contained off of areas that you don't want it. It's not perfect for making a pattern because they're stuck that far from the light. So you can't, it's not very flexible on how hard or soft it is, but it's a pretty handy thing, and so, that's something that a lot of lights have. Now, when you get into units that are made to be softer, you don't so often have barn doors because they're not going to do as much because the light's more diffused, so it's going to be harder to get a cut on it. So if you want a hard cut on a softer light, you often need a larger device to cause that cut. So I had, for instance, this, which is a big light, big broad source. So that's a nice soft light there. And then, but the background's right. So say I wanted the background to be dark. So if I had a hard light on her instead of a soft light, it's a hard light on her, and I wanted the background to be darker. And so we got her. She got a nice hard light on her. Background's bright. I'll bring this barn door in. And the background's not as bright, just controlling it with that barn door. Because it's a pretty hard light. So if you take a soft light, and say gram surround, now you got a nice soft light on her. If you took a little, where do you put my light? If this light had a little barn door on it, which it doesn't, and you set up its background's bright, you tried to bring a little barn door in it doesn't do anything at all, because the light's spread all the way over there. One of the downsides of a soft source is when you're trying to separate from the background, especially the closer the subject is from the background, it gets hard to control the background. And so what you tend to do is want larger flags or controllers and have them be closer to the background. So if you can get something large and bring it in closer and not get it in the shot, there it's in the shot, but you can get something larger and closer and try to work it in there, you can start to get the background darker, but it's tricky. But I am doing something. I'm getting it darker, but it's taking something pretty big. So you could use something even bigger than this and just try to get it in as close as you can. And you can work with the position of the key light and everything too. But you might have to play around with this but it can be tricky.
How much effect would a grid have?
A little. I mean, there's grids that it's like a little, describe it, a little louver.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of little squares that stick out. Yeah, it helps keep the light a little straighter. It does make a difference. It's not, nothing's real perfect with a soft light, but does help with spill a little bit.
All right, so this light is called a low DP light. If you walked on a set with one of these now, people would go like, what is that? This was probably the first light not this particular one, but one like this was probably the first light I owned. It's a very primitive, you could call, tungsten light. It's a tungsten light like that, but it doesn't have a lens in front of it. It just has a bare bulb, and the bare bulb shoots out a bunch of light. It puts out a lot of light, but It's not very pretty, and it's not very controllable. There's a side view of the same light, all right? And that's probably a 40-year-old light, right? Still works. I have 3 of them from many years ago, all right? So this is on the set of The Shining. Have y'all seen The Shining? The movie The Shining? Okay, it's widely considered the best horror movie of all time. For a non-super bloody, it's got blood, but a psychological horror movie. But this is on the set of The Shining, and this guy right here with the beard is Stanley Kubrick, who again is widely considered the greatest film director of all time. You know, nobody can ever agree on this kind of thing, but he did 2001, Clockwork Orange, Full Metal Jacket, and others. Very well-respected director, and he's very photographically inclined. He understands that well. Well, if you'll notice up here, you know, that's like a $60 million movie 20 years ago, right? They had money. And if you'll notice up here, there is a Lowell DP right here, and there's Lowell grip gear holding this flag. So what we're saying is, on this $60 million movie, they're using one of these lights to, you know, just to bounce some light up in the ceiling, right? And to go a little closer, okay, you know, one of the world's greatest directors. This guy is a assistant camera guy on this movie. He later became a DP, one of the world's greatest DPs, and this cheap-ass light here, you know, crude light. I pulled one out on a movie one time working with a California director, and I was supplying some lights, and he laughed at me. You know, he laughed. He hurt my feelings, but he laughed. What the hell is that? You know, but it's not the light you use; it's what you do with it. You can take anything and make it work. All right, you can't hide behind the equipment. You know, if somebody knows what they're doing, they can take anything and make it work. You can't say, well, if we had HMIs, or if we had the latest LED, or if we had this, or we had that, we can make this look good. That's bullshit. You know, you can make any light work. Some work better, some work worse, but you can make anything work. All right, so this is from a movie, There Will Be Blood. Another really good movie from about 7 or 8 years ago. The actor there is generally regarded as the top actor of all time, of currently rather. But you'll notice, all right, so this is another big budget movie, you know, tons of money. Actors probably making $10 to $15 million for this movie. And what have they got for fill? They've got a big light above this guy's head right here. There's a big soft light up above his head, but because he's got on a hat, they're using these little lights, just like this little baby right here. These little lights shot through a lot of diffusion, and over here shot through a diffusion to light up underneath here, and to give just a little kiss of light underneath there, just to bring him out just a little bit. And you ask about gel, you'll see here that they have gel, orange gel on the light to make it even warmer. All right. They may have it dimmed down, they may not. I don't know. All right, so this is one of the Indiana Jones movies. Y'all have seen the Indiana Jones movies, all right. So Harrison Ford somewhere back in there in a car, and this is cars rigged out to actually drive down the road while they're filming, all right. And you'll notice again, there's a tungsten light right here that's providing just a little bit of fill light to him underneath his hat, all right. So I don't know, this was probably, I don't know which one this is. It wasn't the first one, I don't think. If it was done now, maybe they would be using some other type of light, like an LED. But they've got a tungsten light, and it's working, and the movie worked, and it turned out good, right? So it's not the lighting instrument, it's how you use it and what you bring to the party. This is Once Upon a Time in the West. Did y'all see that? That came out about 4 years ago. It wasn't the best cinema. Best Cinematography, Best Screenplay. This director, the photographer, this isn't the photographer, this photographer has won 3 Academy Awards for Best Photography. His name is Robert Richardson. He's got long white hair. He looks like, like a Messiah or something, but he's excellent. And one of his tricks is like to light these people. You see the lights kind of pointing up. His nose shadow is going up. He is taking a light, probably something like this ellipsoid light, and hitting it right down on the tablecloth and making the tablecloth really hot, but it bounces up and kicks light on the people. And so that's one of his stylistic things, but he's a great photographer. Okay, when I said they use light banks outside, this is 6 lights. This is 6 1,000 watt lights. And they're similar to what you would see in a car. Each one's 1,000 watts, but they look kind of like what your headlights are. They have the little facets on there. That's 6,000. This is 24,000. So this light's about this big, 24,000 watts. And for a big nighttime shoot, they possibly would have 2 or 3 of these on a big crane, 50, 60 feet up in the air, shining down for one side, and then maybe something on another side. So the advantage of these, you can turn each of these lights off individually, and you can dim it. So there's a lot of control with it, and they throw the light a long ways. All right, so we were talking about before there were HMIs were real prevalent. If you wanted a big light outside, you either had a cluster of lights like we just saw, or you had a brute arc. All right, this is arc light where carbon rods come together, and throws off a zillion watts of light. But you've got to keep those carbon rods just at the right distance, so you're constantly trimming them. So you can see it's got a smokestack on it, right? This is a light with a smokestack because they put off smoke, when they're lit up. And there's a guy standing by who his job is to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and also to constantly keep trimming the light to keep it just right. And this is a panel in front of it to soften it up. And obviously a crane. All right. This is the same thing. This is from the original West Side Story movie from the early 60s. They've got a brute arc, and it's mounted on a crane that's being driven down the street as these guys walk down the street. So, they're going to a lot of effort. And this is a description of hard light. This is a NASA shot. Some astronaut took this still photograph. But if you see here, hard light, that's the sun without going through any atmosphere. The Earth has atmosphere, what we breathe, and that softens the light a little bit. On the moon, there's no atmosphere, so the light, when the sun's hitting the moon, the light is very hard. This is from Dunkirk. Anybody see Dunkirk? It came out 2 or 3 years ago. It was okay. But they had a lot of boat scenes as they hauled the British soldiers from the beaches at Dunkirk back to England. They use all these diffusion panels overhead to cut the direct light and to control the light. So they'll go to enormous trouble with all the panels and then shoot some HMI lights in at certain places. And it can get where they'll have, conceivably, if they wanted to shoot something out on the street on a big movie, they would have the entire street paneled over with silk, so it looked like it was always overcast and controlled. This is another Stanley Kubrick movie. This is Eyes Wide Shut. All right, so you don't have to, I just described something where they went to enormous trouble to put all these silks. This is just a paper lantern. This is just a Japanese lantern that you can buy in a store, local store. It's just a paper lantern. And that's providing the majority of the light on him. It doesn't have to be elaborate. So this is from Heat, the movie Heat. Again, a paper lantern over the top, and then side light there. And then another little light, it gives a little down light there. So it doesn't have to be completely crazy or anything like that. This is an older movie, obviously a black and white movie. Can you tell me where the lights, there's a light on his face, a hard light on his face. Where's the light coming from? Do you see it in the scene? You can look at the nose shadow and tell where a light is coming from. Is it this? No. That's probably lighting something in the background. It's this light up here. And if you trace it down, that matches the shadow that's on the nose. So when you're watching a movie, if it's not soft lit, if you can see a shadow, you can tell where it's coming from. Just by looking at noses, you can tell a lot. So on this one, this is a big soft source overhead that you can't see, pointing straight down, and that throws their eyes in shadows, makes them look menacing, makes their bald heads glow, and then lights our subject well. And just to explain that while there was a certain time that most DPs, directors of photography, and most lighting directors and all that were white dudes, right? But it's changing a lot now. And so there are a lot of women shooting. This is an Australian DP, Mandy Walker, and she's done a lot of big movies. This is Matthew Labatique, an African-American guy. He's excellent. He's done a lot of good stuff. And he's also very good at hand-holding camera. But this is Iron Man. Y'all see Iron Man? Okay, well, he shot the first Iron Man. And this is my last slide. Again, it's not the equipment. It's what you do with the equipment. All right, so this is Martin Scorsese, probably the greatest older director. This is from Killers of the Flower Moon, which probably came in second to Oppenheimer for Best Film last year in Academy Awards. But they're filming a scene that's supposed to be a newsreel scene. Martin Scorsese is 82 years old now, so this was taken about 18 months ago, so he would have been 81, maybe 80, right? The camera is much older camera. So the camera comes from 1917. This is his personal camera. He didn't get it as a little kid. He bought it somewhere along the way. But they use that to film the scenes, and we're talking an $80, $90 million movie. They used a 1917 35 millimeter film camera to shoot a significant scenes in a big movie. That wasn't their primary camera, but it still worked. And much as I love video, there's no camera in existence now that you're going to use for something 100 years from now. It just is not going to happen. But the film cameras still work after 100 years. Can still work.
iPhone 9.
Huh?
The iPhone 9.
Okay.